All right, and we're back. Thank you for staying with us on Checkpoint. Our conversation continues on the state of Kenya. I'm seeing some of your feedback. Eunice Minor says, great conversation, issues based. All right. And there's a lot more. Joe Ali says, our nation for way too long has been defined by dysfunction, but the people have become acclimatized to it. Mutahi Murithi says, admittedly, Kenya is in a rough patch right now with our priorities upside down, but we'll get through unscathed. That remains to be seen. Linda Ngari, you're loving the conversation. We ought to encourage more of such dialogue over debate. Keep your views coming in. I'm still here with Isaac Amuke, Marilyn Kamuru, Dan Chizi Aseda, Elaine Okaya. We're talking about these two political individuals and factions that we have. Isaac, so Raila is saying, well, he said now he doesn't want to be sworn in, but, you know, his supporters are saying they want him sworn in. They will be mourning on Tuesday. There's an economic boycott. On the other hand, you know, President-elect Uhuru Kenyatta supporters saying he was, you know, rightfully elected. He will be sworn in, and we need to move on and work together. What do you think?
I could have a lot to say about all those things, but my starting point is that we should not be afraid of politics. And number two is we should speak about these things courageously, without fear. Now, I'm not worried about the political processes. I think they will run their course, whatever eventuality, right? Raila will do what he must, Uhuru will do what he must. But my big concern is the layer under them, right? Which is Kenya, the Kenyans, right? We have torn each other apart. Like we are like, I don't know what being a Kenyan is anymore. Like, we've torn each other apart very much. I see we worry more about the politics and the economy, but I think we should be more worried about our social fabric, right? There's so much pain in some places. Even the people who are celebrating are not really celebrating, because they know that after this, like after Tuesday, right? Mm-hmm. So then what, right? Uhuru will be president, you know. But then what? Like, there's just so much pain, so much hate.
So let me ask you this: does anything either of these two gentlemen says resonate with you at all?
Yes.
Okay. What's that?
First, I think what Raila is doing is very important for this country, in the sense that it is giving political education to young people. I say that because I got politically conscious after '92, like after watching the second liberation, as they call it, you know, the protests, the picketing and so on and so forth. So that's how you get a political education. Now, what is happening now is giving us political education, especially the young people. So it's important that all this is happening. But my worry is the state, to be honest, because the state is not a political player. Uhuru Kenyatta is a political player, but those two have been made into one, right? So the state is treating, it's like the state is in competition with part of the citizenry, right? Which should not be the case. Like the police is supposed to be neutral, right? That is not the case right now, right? You know, the government spokesman speaks like he's a spokesman for the president's party, right? So in that sense, we don't feel like we have like a state in the middle. Like the state is actually a political player, unfortunately so, when it's supposed to be neutral. Because 10 years from now, someone else will occupy, you know, the presidency and so on. But the state is supposed to be self-perpetuating, right? Because if someone else becomes president, it will mean that they have to sweep away the Uhuru state, right? Then it's like, we can't move like that. Okay. The state needs to be, you know, an organ that functions and self-perpetuates and doesn't appear partisan.
All right, interesting. The state seems to be against the citizenry. That's a powerful
A
statement.
section of the citizenry.
A section of the citizenry. Okay. Marilyn, anything from these two gentlemen that resonates with you or does not resonate with you? What do you see about?
I think I would pick up where Isaac has left off, and I would say, number one, we're no longer talking about these two gentlemen. We're talking about Honorable Odinga, but we're talking about the office of the presidency now. And I think that's exactly what you're saying, which is that we need to see the shift now. The president-elect needs to start occupying the office of the presidency. And that is different from being the chairperson of the Jubilee Party. The political contest is over, as they've told us, but the messaging is inconsistent, right? So we're hearing the messaging that, you know, politics, the time for politics is over. And for politicians, the time for politics is over. But for citizens, the time for politics has just begun. Because for us, our job is accountability. It's, you promised us X, and we expect you to deliver. So we are now moving into our engagement mode when you are retreating to delivery mode. Right? So it's not that politics is done, it's that there's a shift in the actors. But what we're not seeing, and I agree with Isaac, and I think this is critically important, is people occupying offices. They continue to act as personalities. So you see the deputy president, and he's not acting as an office holder of the office of the deputy president. Same thing with cabinet secretaries, the attorney general. You know, I mean, why on earth would we be hearing things from the police like, we didn't receive a letter? So what are you telling us? You don't have a mail system? You can't read? Like, what exactly does that mean, you know? And that they say this with a straight face, to me, frankly, is a reference to the fact that they've abdicated their role. They're basically just saying, we've been told what to do, and we can't do anything else. And that's what I think Isaac is hinting at. It's really, really dangerous, because then what the citizenry does is they pull back. Because they're no longer engaging with you as a neutral state player. They're saying, okay, there's partisanship there. And by the way, that pulling back initially is from people who didn't support you, but pretty soon will also be from your base.
Yes.
It becomes consistent, because your base will be looking for services from those very same institutions and getting treated the exact same way. So it creates a very dangerous cycle where people are pulling back, and what's going to happen is that there's radicalization happening outside, and it's going to be against the state. Okay. And I think that's a very dangerous way to play it out. And that's kind of what you're seeing, for instance, in the US. Yeah. And this is kind of the same way we started. You know, you remember the Not My President with Donald Trump, you know? And we're now hearing the Not My President here, and everyone's like, poo-poo. But I'm like, look what this is doing to them a year down the line. Okay, they had midterm elections, that's different, but look at what it's doing to them socially. And that's exactly what Isaac's talking about. It's tearing them apart. So it's not something to ignore.
Dan, what do you expect from President Uhuru Kenyatta and from Raila?
Well, I guess I would rather say not what I expect. I don't know whether I expect them to actually rise to the occasion. I have to be honest, but what I would really have loved to have seen is some level of statecraft where we create opportunities that and situations that give citizens a chance. For instance, if you see how we construct our economy, we are even criminalizing hawkers. People are trying to sell goods in a space and make money for their families, but somehow this is seen as uchafu, kidogo, it's wrong. We are thinking of bylaws to get rid of people that are trying to participate in an economy that seems to have left them out. Because what's the space where they're supposed to be at? If you were to start your business, where are you supposed to start? And what we really need to create is a space that includes people in and not just the economy, includes the people in the politics. Because as Isaac and Melin have said, if people feel like they're not being heard, then it gets more and more extreme, because they increase the volume and they increase the volume.
Do you think any of these two leaders are listening?
I think actually that's our biggest failing. I don't think that as a state, actually, forget the personalities, I don't think they listen, and I don't think they have people that speak. So I think everybody agrees with them. And so when in a room and everybody agrees with you and you're in leadership, it should be a sign that something is going to go wrong terribly. But I think that's where we are. I mean, an institution, for instance, like the police, nobody in this country that I've ever met trusts the police.
Yeah.
Nobody. It doesn't matter what politician they support. If you ask them to go to the police station, they all sit up straight. They don't trust the police at all. And this loss of trust, you can see it more obvious in far-off places. For instance, what we saw previously in places like Capedo, where they've just lost the trust completely in the system, where if they see the uniform, they fire.
Yeah.
But you can see the seeds of this. People don't trust the police. So police are isolated. They live in camps. Generally, they don't interact. And as has been said before, you can direct it at one part of the country for only so long before it begins to break down. So there's a real need to build trust in not only the institutions, like all our institutions have to build more trust. People need to trust that it will work.
Yeah.
Even if it takes time, I need to go there and it will work.
Okay.
Because if that trust continues to break down is where we will have a really difficult problem.
So I'd asked this before the break. Elaine, are we just talking, lofty ideas and talking shop? I mean, you're all sitting here and you have good jobs, you have careers, you have a voice on Twitter to speak, I suppose everybody else does. But some would say these are all very lofty ideas and they have no rooting whatsoever in my everyday life, in my everyday reality. Are we being idealistic, utopian even?
I don't think so, because to think that way maybe, I think, is predicated on the fact that there's a lack of sobriety in this country. And like my fellow panelists have said, we're not listening to each other. We know what needs to be done, but we're not listening. There's a lack of sobriety. And it's concerning because now it's basically just a competition. Win-win, like Dan said earlier. It's like, I want to win, so I'm going to do what it takes. And when you look at the fabric of our society, there's this big rent in the middle. This nation is hurting. So you have these people on the other side, and you have these people on the other side, and it's almost 50-50. So, if I was Mr. Kenyatta, I would be very concerned about, people talking about his illegitimacy as a president, people talking about secessionism, because that is the voice of disenfranchisement. People feel excluded, people feel left out. So the onus, therefore, is on him to figure out, how can I bring these people back into the fold so that we can be one nation?
He says he will be magnanimous in his victory.
Well, given the last 5 years, because every election cycle, then we kind of have these kind of issues, and I haven't really seen, any efforts to bring this country together. I mean, there's a clip I saw where the president himself said that, it's the Kalenjin and the Kikuyu who voted for us. So then what happens to the other people? What happens to their vote? Are you saying that their vote doesn't matter because with this block you have the numbers that you need to win the election and that's all that needs to be happening? What about the other people? What about bringing them in? What about making them feel like they're part of this nation? What about making them feel like their government works for them as well? What about making them feel like they're included or they have a shot, at the presidency, for instance? Those are conversations that we need to have.
Okay. Isaac, I want to start with our closing comments now as we go.
I think, to answer you,
yeah.
No apologies should be made for being idealistic. In fact, we should all be very idealistic. And no apologies should be made about lofty ideas or lofty conversations. Because it is out of those lofty ideas or those lofty idealistic conversations that we develop thoughts that then trickle down, in a sense. The constitution is a lofty thing. It was made by lofty idealistic people. So we should stay lofty. We should encourage more lofty idealistic conversation. The issue is, after these lofty idealistic conversations, then what?
Yeah.
Right? So how do you take that? How do you take it from there going forward? And it's us going back to the conversation we have in our houses, the conversation we have in pubs. What are we talking about? Who in our private lives? How are we known? Right? Do people come to public fora and speak? And people who know you are like, he's lying because we know him.
Yeah.
He's a tribalist, right?
Yeah.
And that's the point. Hold yourself to a high standard.
All right.
Be consistent. right?
So
yeah.
lofty ideas, and then what? Marilyn, then what?
And then we act, you know. And for me, that's why I agree, thank you. We're unapologetic about being idealistic, and we need to also have a sense of urgency. And that, for me, I think is one of the most critical things. There is no more time. This is the second term for this administration, formerly the Jubilee Coalition, now the Jubilee Party.
Mm-hmm.
So we have expectations both from the first term, the unfulfilled promises from term one, and the things you've promised for term two.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's a need to demonstrate a certain level of urgency, but more importantly, a sensitivity to Kenyans now. You know, we're talking about the country being split, people feeling disenfranchised, and the language is really not helpful. You know, tyranny of numbers, it implies that you are unimportant. You do not matter. We can do this without you. We don't need that kind of language. We need to have a sensitivity for what we've been through, the economic losses. And by economic losses, I'm not speaking about, you know, businesses. I'm talking about people who earn a daily wage who've not been able to earn that wage.
Okay.
You know, and so it's really important that we start seeing a shifting that's centering Kenyans, you know, healthcare, quality of education, not just quantity. Those things, once they start happening, can
Then
start
we
to
can-
bridge some of the, because there's too much talk. We really need to see some
action.
tangible action.
All right, Dan, you get the final say in just about a minute.
No, actually, I'll just say in my opinion, we just have to start again. I think we've been too focused on protection of a Kenya that we think exists. Unfortunately, that Kenya that we think exists is already excluding sections of the country. So if we discuss an economy, it's in Nairobi 60%. So then everybody outside of Nairobi is sharing 40%. So we should really be thinking of creating a new one that allows this a lot more diversified, allows people to do more varied businesses, and for those things to be viable. Because if we keep trying to tell people that we are maintaining it and they're already outside it, then they will just be trying to get in. But our language should probably change and say, you know, okay, you're a pastoralist, or you're a fisherman. The government needs to recognize that as an economic activity that also has ties to who you are, you know, as an individual, and we're going to support that so that it's part of this economy.
Right.
You're a hawker, you're part of this country, and you matter, even if you're just one person. You still matter, and we're going to do our best to make it happen for you.
So bringing everyone in. Okay, thank you. Elaine Okai, Dan Chiziaseda, Marilyn Kamuru, and Isaac Kamuke, thank you all so much for being with us. Your feedback is interesting. I will get through to it in the course of this show. Skyty Kariki says, once you don't accept reality, you will never get a solution with anything. Thiaka Justice says, the gentlemen and ladies are telling it all. Hope both sides of the political divide are watching and listening. We certainly hope so. This is what potentially dialogue could look like. Just saying. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. We want to take a break right now. We have the day's sports news. But my take is also coming up next, as usual. You don't want to miss that. So we'll be right back.